Yeah, one of the most important parts of an agreement is quality control, because in a relationship where there is an endorsement of quality by one party for the other, you always have to define how quality control is going to be measured. And that could be, for example, by provision of samples. It could be by literature. Very sophisticated companies have excellent brand manuals, and they will not even allow you to change the font and the size and the display and the visiting cards. Whenever there is an improvisation, they will ask you to provision samples. The advertising material could be vetted in terms of quality control and things of that sort. So you'll define quality control. But there are other forms also of quality control. For example, in businesses that are more innovative and more knowledge-centric and more spur of the moment, quality control can also come by financial participation between the parties. It can come in by management participation, and it can come in by technical guidance and training that is given to parties. So after you've decided on the agreement and you've sort of, now you're ready to come to a lawyer and to narrate your facts so that it can be translated into an agreement, you don't have to personally bother about what laws would govern that agreement. And the reason why I say this is that, we are one of the few countries that still doesn't have a standalone legislation for franchising. Having said that, our laws on franchising are one of the best. In our personal experience as lawyers, we have not seen cases where enforceability of agreements between the franchisor and the franchisee has not been upheld by the courts, except where the clauses were very vague and the interpretation was left to just the conduct of the parties. But the courts are very effective in getting relief. And when we draft agreements, the agreement has to factor in almost close to about 15 to 20 legislations, right from all intellectual property legislations to contract, to Competition Act, to see whether things there that you impose on restraints are reasonable or unreasonable. Sometimes provision of Income Tax Act, whether the royalties, now of course we are very liberal in allowing remittance of royalties, but you could have issues on royalty remittances and things of that sort. Then the question that arises is that should you record the agreement? And do you need to record it as in register the agreement, or do you need to record it, for example, with the relevant intellectual property authorities as a binding document? So that decision is another decision that you will take. There are advantages, of course, of recordal. The fact that if once you're recorded, then you are recognized, the agreement is transparent, it has authenticity, it has some value under evidence. And in some rare cases, you can, as a licensee, if you were a licensee or a franchisee, also get into the ability to institute a suit in the court. So let's assume there's a violation now. Somebody copies. Whose responsibility is it now to alert the system? So your franchisor could be in India, it could be overseas, and you are in India. Whose responsibility is it to alert the system where there's a violation? Violation of the market by third parties. Yeah, so the typical responsibility would be of the franchisee, because the franchisor normally, if you're talking about a foreign brand, would not be in India. If it's an Indian company, it would be in India. The franchise, now once you've alerted the franchisor, who has to take action? Franchisor. And therefore, it is very important that your agreement has this provision. What if in your agreement, the responsibility of monitoring is on you? So some businesses have a very unique way of collecting royalty. They collect royalty, which is in exchange of the benefits that you're getting, and they set aside a certain amount which goes into a brand education pool or an enforcement pool, and that is contributed by many people. Because you might have a situation where there's a violation and one franchisor or one franchisee says, I will not spend the money because somebody else is also suffering, another franchisee is also suffering. So why don't you get him to spend money? And that narrowed thinking between the two parties can undo the entire franchise. Wealth is not created by parts, it is created in totality. So, and then we come into a very interesting aspect once you have done all this, and what are the unique practices that differ in industries. So we have two co-panelists who will share their experience from their respective industry practices. For example, if you are a music service, today the elements of your violation could be, which would be more in digital form, would be very different for example, if you are a garment company. If you, one of the businesses that we are talking about here is also into print matter, and the element of print matter will be very different from digital. So what are your experiences when it comes to?
Okay. infringement is absolutely, it's my responsibility to protect the brand that I'm licensing to people around the world. And we talk in the introduction to this session about the differences between online and offline infringement. Of course, you might expect online infringement to be more difficult, but in fact, it's a lot easier for us to deal with, especially when you find infringers working on platforms such as Flipkart or Amazon or whatever, because you can deal directly with those platforms. You don't have to pursue individuals who are selling the counterfeit goods. However, I do rely on the eyes and ears of my licensees, my agents around the world to bring these things to my attention, and it doesn't always get finished with a letter, a cease and desist. So whatever is required, we have asserted our trademark, and in order to protect it and ensure that it isn't challenged, we need to pursue infringement, and that's what we do wherever we find it.
Well, we from the music business, I would like to say that we are primarily creative guys. It brings a lot of courage and a lot of your acumen in terms of the way you think and create things makes matter. Saying this, when we publish music, we create an icon out of it. Music per se, Safir, is not just in terms of music publishing. We have grown the music away from music publishing business to a more of a licensing and a merchandising business. So basically, what you are hearing today morning, you can actually wear a Eminem. Music connects to youth primarily. Primarily, the audience is teenagers, a little adult. They are hooked to music. So when they are hooked to music, we create that ambience and create a range of products wherein there is a very strong correlation, and people latch onto it as an attribute that they carry for the artist. Saying this, the copyright laws in music is very strict, and we are guided by the global laws prevalent in the world. With the present government's effort in Make in India efforts, and with the GATT treaty and getting into the world body forums and things have happened, the doors are open. We are really soliciting partners in terms of how we can associate across platforms, across product categories per se. But legally, yes, we are there to create business, and anybody who is there would be accepted in open arms.
So, you've now got a business that is up and running, you've understood it, it's profitable, it's doing well, your relationship between the franchise and the franchisee is fine, royalty payments are going on, the customer popularity is increasing, the brand visibility is on. You're now into the step of what is called as monetization. And monetization of a business can happen in several aspects. One of the most obvious aspects of monetization is when you go in for a public offer, if you are in a business that is capable of going into public offer. Another form of monetization is when you do what is called as, when you expand the scope of licensing, whether it is by sub-licensing or it is by product categories. And now I will ask my co-panelists to share with you their vast experience specific to their industry, because what they symbolize are very good, successful stories in businesses that they represent, and you'll get a little bit of a flavor from their views on how they would have successfully monetized their businesses. So
I'll take this first. There was a very strong connect that happens with music or entertainment per se, is that it also has a very strong promotional angle to it. Because it has a promotional angle to it, the moment you get into this sort of an association, the advantage is that generally you pay few crores to get a Lady Gaga endorse a brand that you follow. But if you create a beauty product which has Lady Gaga imagery on it and which is approved by Lady Gaga herself, what happens is you create a product which is automatically relates to her, and the connect and the positioning of the product happens very different and very direct to the audience. So therefore, these are the nuances that happens in terms of when you think through and create products which are more relevant to the industry.
Okay. For me, monetization is really mutual. So we work with licensees around the world, and when they're successful, we're successful because we share a royalty on their sales. We do everything we can to support our licensees. We create imagery, we have creative, we have design, we have style guides. We've created a lot of investment in interpreting the name of the University of Oxford into a consumer brand. And all of that is available to all of our licensees. That's my investment. And the return comes when we strike gold, when a licensee finds the right design, the right marketing, the right way to reach the consumer, and you know, from there are incredible options available in terms of expansion of territory, expansion of product category, and never be afraid to amend an agreement to reflect future success. So, you know, when it works very well.
And this is also where the element of corporate governance sets in. So, for example, if you're a good partner, you're perceived by even the investment community as a good partner. Your franchisor is quite keen to grow into other geographical areas with you. He looks at you for new businesses, so you're not threatened by the fact that if he's got multiple brands, he comes and chooses somebody else. The examples of the two listed companies that I shared with you are examples where they've diversified, you know, in a very healthy way. There is also equity participation between the franchise and the franchisee in those particular examples. Therefore, the learning from those examples is that it's not that only the franchisor created wealth because he, you know, for example, got his royalties in time or he got a growing sales, but also the fact that there was a element of market capitalization that went into the pocket of the franchisee, for which the franchisee is not paying any royalty, because that's the percentage of shares that he has in a company that has gone for public. The incidence of monetization from an equity perspective seem to suggest that the market values good businesses. In fact, those of you who really are serious about monetization would probably be aware of the fact that one of the most legendary investors in the world, Warren Buffett, actually says that some of the best businesses to own are franchise businesses. So which could be from both perspectives. It could be a bottling person, or it could be the company like Coke or Pepsi. And with that, I'll allow you to. I think you want to make a presentation.
No, it's
no. Okay, I can see that.
I think she's running off time. It's fine.
Yeah, so I didn't want to get into too much of technical jargon, but I, hope that in the process of walking you through into Pragati Maidan and getting you here on a sort of a slightly lazy Sunday afternoon where you might like to go out and, grab a cup of tea, if not a beer,